Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. Today, my next guest played 12 seasons in the NFL. He's in the Detroit Lions Ring of Honor. He is a Virginia and Michigan Sports Hall of Famer. He's simply, to me, simply a great player. I call him number 84, Herman Moore. How you doing today?
Hey Otis, man, I'm good. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm real good. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. We just got I'm in Georgia, so we're starting to get some of that cold weather, and I'm one of those people, man. If it's below 70, I'm cold.
I hear you. I'm trying to figure out why I stayed in Michigan, but I love the people and the area I live in and everything. But yeah, it gets cold up here as well.
Well, my mom's brother, my uncle, Uncle Spike, my mom and my family on my mother's side is from Montgomery, Alabama.
Mhm.
But he moved to Detroit years ago, worked for General Motors, and became a Detroit Lions. So trust me, he's gonna be happy I'm doing this interview.
Okay, that's a good deal.
And he moved here and moved back. So he's in now here.
All right, very cool.
So my first question for you is tell me, what was it like your last year in Virginia, 1990? You seemed like you came into your own. You had 54 catches, 1,190 yard receiving, 13 TDs. Uh, Going into your last year, what was that like for you when you was putting it all together and was showing the NFL you that guy?
It was an interesting deal there. I had a little success the season before. I was a redshirt junior, and the NFL had already contacted me and some teams and said that I was showing up on some boards for that final year. But you kind of put that behind. We came in, we were on fire that year, and up becoming the number one team in the nation. Before our quarterback got hurt, we lost to Georgia Tech, who ultimately went on to win they were co-champions with Colorado that year.
Right.
But it was a great year, man. I looked at it like this. It was you're on the stage and you're playing a really good talent as far as Clemson and Penn State, Georgia Tech, like I said, who were ranked
Right.
pretty high. And then it was a pretty competitive year. And that if you're going to show up and show out, that was the year to do it. And I got on some radars, and the rest was history. It wasn't as easy as people think because
Right.
you still got to go through the process of making sure you stay healthy. You got to
Sure.
still show up every game. Luckily, that year I really was on fire and got a chance to get picked by Detroit. That whole draft thing was a whole nother story, man. That was a fun piece as well.
Well, that is funny. Let me ask you a question because you segue into my next question. But let me just ask this question. What was it like in that era? Now, I graduated high school in '89, so I was kind of coming a little bit a couple of years after you. But what was that era of playing college ball like? Because it's not like it is now. These guys where you got the internet, these guys can go look and see, like, yeah, they got me rated, first round, this, that. When we were coming through, you didn't have that luxury. Somebody had to tell
Nah,
you something.
yeah, they had the magazines that would come out right before you would show up for the season. Man, you might get injured, and they might have you predicted to be something, and then all of a sudden your season's over, and they don't even know it yet.
Correct.
But Sporting News is one I used to follow a lot, and
Okay.
you get your preseason rankings, your AP rankings, and all that stuff. So that was pretty much it. You go and wait till the writers and the reporters come in on a Monday or a Tuesday or something after the weekend. Then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you get the rankings, you get the ratings, you get all that stuff. That's how you would find out where you were as a player. And then you start looking at later, they compile all the statistics and then
Mm-hmm.
you can see kind of where you rank. It wasn't like now. I mean, when the game's over, going into it, out of it, at halftime. Hey, hey, you'd be like, man, look, man, I go into halftime checking your phone and be like, man, I need 10 more catches. I'm already falling behind. We couldn't do that back then.
No, you had to wait on the paper. You had to wait on that paper to come
That's
out
right.
and look at the stats and see. And then even then, unlike now, they didn't report every school. Like it could be a
Oh,
guy down. down in a small school, I mean a HBCU school or something, tearing it up, and you wouldn't know it because they're not in the paper.
That's right. You're exactly right. And then sometimes you had to wait. It's not like I could go print it from anywhere. I had to literally wait till either a coach or a reporter gave me that information before I would know it.
Times have truly changed. But you did segue to my next question, which was, what was that feeling like for you going into the '91 draft for your family? Because once again, you coming through, the draft was not Hollywood like it is now. So what was that like for you and your family?
It was different because I'm from Danville, Virginia, and I
Okay.
had my family, my mom, my dad, some of my relatives that lived in town came over to my mom's house. And that's when we still had like the phones. They weren't even
The
cordless at
landline.
the time, right? The landline. And I don't even know if we didn't have like call waiting. It's like if somebody called you, it was busy. So you had to make sure people weren't on the phone. And then get off the phone, somebody might be calling me because teams would reach out. And that experience was pretty cool because the first call I actually received was from Denver. And not many people know
Wow.
that at the fourth pick. And it was I'd flown out prior to the draft to meet with them and walk through their facility, get a chance to meet Coach Reeves. And uh, they were going to pick my role, a linebacker. They were going to pick me at that fourth pick. And that's when Elway was there. And they ultimately went with the linebacker. And I fell back to the 10th pick, and Detroit was on the clock. And I already met with Wayne Fonts. He had visited me at the school. And
Okay.
ultimately, he made it clear to me when we were walking on the field prior to the draft. He says, if you're there at number 10, we're going to take you. He says, you ever heard of a guy named Barry Sanders? I'm like, even before Barry
No.
was Barry, and I knew who Barry Sanders was coming out of
Right.
college. And
Correct.
so when they said you're going to get a chance to play there, I was just elated, man, and ecstatic to just be able to make it to the NFL and have that opportunity.
You were like the next guy in line after Harold Carmichael, because after you had Harold ushered in that, was that first one to usher in the big tall receiver, and then you came along a little bit faster, of course, than Carmichael in his day, and you was that next guy that was setting a long list now that came behind you of tall receivers to come into the league. What was your rookie year like for you? What was that transition from college and then starting over in the NFL?
It was a little bit of an adjustment. A lot of players nowadays, because of their training regimen, they're a little bit more geared and prepared because of the facilities, because of the technology, and because the
Sure.
simulation that the NFL has now run in coordination, I think, with a lot of the collegiate level, to where the transition isn't as drastic as it was when I came in. I mean, you're coming out of college and you just don't know what you're walking into.
Okay.
You talked about Harold Carmichael. I used to watch him a lot when he's in and I thought, hey, this is a big guy. But when I came out, there was a lot of questions being that, okay, this is a big wide receiver.
Sure.
He's slightly undersized for a tight end, but he's kind of too big to be a wide receiver because the Lions had to run and shoot. And everybody
Right.
there was under like 5'10", with the
I
exception of
remember.
Willie Green. And he was only one at 6'1", 6'2". But when I came in, they said we're going to be putting you in the slot. The slot, I struggled a little bit because it was just really small, quick moves in tight
Sure.
spaces. And the ball's out real quick, and then it's all predicated on you making this really quick movement. And for me, I was a downfield player and really used my size and my strength to really defeat players at the line. So it was a little different. But once we got through that season, they started to adjust the offense a little bit more traditional, more Z
Okay.
receiver type deal. And I was getting downfield. And from then on, man, after my first year struggles of dropping passes and just really trying to fit into that run and shoot, everything else from then on for the next 7 straight years just took off.
Oh, well, I can attest to that from watching you. I was just throw it up, just throw it up, just throw it up. Herman got it.
Yep.
um, Let me. I asked this question to Eric Davis, and I want to ask it to you because I want to see what your thoughts are. He made it wonderfully, but the question is how smart do you have to be to play in the NFL?
Well, I would say on which side of the ball. I mean, defense, you just got to go tackle the person with the ball and make sure you're in a place you're supposed to be. If you're on the line, just go straight ahead and try and get to the quarterback or stop the receiver or the running back before he gets through any of those gaps, right? Don't lose containment, right? It's pretty simple. Down the field is a little bit more complicated when you get into the secondary and you're running different coverages. For the offense, it's a little bit different because there's so much that you're reading when you start getting into the skill positions. But not to say that I mean, that's where it all begins in the line, right? There's a lot of magic that happens there. But anyone who plays at the collegiate level and then you ultimately go up to the NFL level, it's a whole different animal because not only does the game move fast, and like a lot of players don't think it does because they may come from like the SEC or they may come from some of these other conferences. But these are well-conditioned players who do this for a living. This isn't something we do between schoolwork and between our social life. This is what you do. You live and you breathe it. And you have such a small window of time to play it that there's a commitment that players, when I played, I can't attest to what they do now, but we made it where you had to pay attention. It wasn't like the digital side now where you can get to it when you get to it. So you had that one window of opportunity during practice or during film session to really understand your opponent. Guys would stay longer. You start to observe tendencies. You gotta have some really good brain power to be able to play in the NFL and be successful. So there's a difference. You don't have to be smart to play in the NFL. You got to be smart, though, to stay.
Okay, I like that. You got to be smart to stay. You can get there, but staying there is another.
That's a whole different beast.
Do you find? Let me ask you this, and I've always been curious of this. Now, by you playing the receiver spot, and when I'm watching the game, do you find that sometimes that even in practice, or maybe you went through this when you were playing, that let's say you have a play call, whatever the play is, and whatever the route is for you to run. In practice, do you run it against different coverages? So in other words, let's say I'm asking you, to run a square in or a crossing route, right? It's one thing to run it in practice when you go on one with a guy, but what happens if they're running a cover two, cover three, or a five dog zone blitz? Do you find that if you're not running those plays against different coverages on game day, sometimes, especially for a young receiver, they can struggle trying to run the route based on coverage?
Yeah, they'll struggle with that. We do run it against multiple coverages. We multiple situations and circumstances where you may have to check in and out of other plays. The play gets changed, or you have to do what we call route adjustment. That route is run one way against two deep, is run a different way against three deep, is run a different way with urgency against man. And once you start doing that, that's the first level. The second level becomes now you're running against different personnel. I may have a smaller guy at the line of scrimmage where I don't have to work my feet as much. I just overpower him and just go where I go. It may be a one way to walk a linebacker or someone bigger. You got to navigate that person a little bit differently because they're stronger and they can maul you at the line. And then there's just other combination coverages that may disrupt you in your route. So you run it and you rep it so many different ways in hopes that when game day rolls around, you naturally are reacting versus having to feel like you've seen it for the first time. And that's kind of what we geared ourselves towards. And I think that's typically the practice. But you got to, as a player, though, you got to be invested to want to go out and run that repetitive stuff and that repetition against that.
Okay. I was wondering because it seems like sometimes that certain guys are not prepared. Once they see a route, it's like them and the quarterback on a different page. But to your point, that may be just the receiver and having those route adjustment based on coverage.
Yeah, and he might have got blown up before then too, and decided that he don't want to run that end route, and somehow he got jammed at the line of scrimmage because he don't want to get off that. He don't want to get off the ball to get up there because he don't want that safety coming in there blowing him up back in the day.
I'm about to say I'm about to say back in the day, not today, now. Back in the day.
Nowadays, man, they go, man, that was a sweet catch over the middle. I'm like, man, listen, you didn't hear anybody going, that was a sweet catch. You heard them saying, man, I can't believe he held on to the ball. That's what you had when we played. The middle was not, when the coach said go in the middle, that was like, what did you do wrong? Like, what did I do, coach? Why
Well,
are you sending me in the middle? And nowadays it's like, coach, can I go? You got everybody raising their hand, taking, I want to go in the middle because,
I,
the
I,
safety,
I,
they can't light you up.
I remember if 42 was in the middle, nobody ran a post. If
Man, I
42
don't
was
get
in
enough.
the if 42 was in the middle, you looking at Scott Mitchell like you throw it if you want to,
Yeah,
but
you
I
throw
tell
it in
you
there if you
what,
want to.
I won't be there.
Yeah, I hated it, man, because I was a big guy, so I usually could get my hands on the pass. So I had to go chase the ball down, and no matter where it was, I couldn't gator arm it because I had a long arm. So
Right.
it's like smaller guys, they just go over their head and they're like, man, coach, I couldn't get to it. I'm like, man, that's crazy. They didn't want to block. And they put the big dog on the linebackers. I had to block the linebackers, had to block the defensive end. I'm like, why am I blocking Reggie White? You know what I mean? And like,
That's the
wow.
first thing.
They were like, well, because you 6'4", 230 pounds. That's why we got you blocking. I'm like, man.
But
So
Reggie is not 240 though.
no, Reggie's 300 pounds, and he a mean preacher. And he would hit me like, man, you know what? You ain't put nothing in the collection plate. That's what it was like. They called him the pastor. I'm like, man, look, man, he mad because I came to church and I ain't go up there for the second offering. And why you coming at me like that?
And Reggie would hit you and then come back and say something like, God loves you. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He
You
good all the time, ain't he, Brother Orr? God is good all the time.
and you sitting there, he looked like he didn't love me a few minutes ago.
I know that's right. I'm like, man, how you going in here trying to decapitate people, and the next time you go in there talking about something, hey man, God loves you.
That's crazy. That's
We
funny
brothers
though.
in Christ.
Okay. do you
Uh,
uh do you believe when they come out with these rankings of players, and they try to say now, instead of saying who's the greatest receiver or who's the greatest quarterback, now they're trying to say who's the greatest player of all time. Do you think it's unfair to do that when you're playing the ultimate team sport? I mean, there's no way to say,
no way.
okay, this quarterback is the greatest player of all time. You like you just stated. Well, if the front five don't do their job, we won't know how good he is.
No, it's impossible to start ranking this. I'll give you a case, right? So if you're a
Mm,
receiver and you play with 20 quarterbacks, I'm not gonna name any names,
right.
and you got others who play with Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and let's say one receiver has better stats during that time period than the guy who played with the Hall of Famers, but that person's considered X. I think it's the person who didn't play with the Hall of Famers that
Correct.
is probably the one that you would be looking harder at and saying that was a harder task to do. But it's not factored in that way. We factor it in with Super Bowls. We factor it in with who they play with and what type of TV coverage that they receive, who was more popular and all that stuff. But it's a lot of players, man. We played with that were just they were really good players. They were great players, and they're never going to get their just due. They're never going to get the acknowledgement because they didn't live on either the coast, and they didn't the major media markets and play in eras where they had these all-star players, but they had to carry that torch, man. And it's unfortunate because I think it should be recognized for when you played and when you did it versus who's the greatest of all time. It's just that's a debate you'll never be able to answer ever.
I agree. I agree. The one receiver I always wanted to see you paired up with, and nothing against the guys that you played with, and trust me, you wouldn't even guess who I'm talking about. But I'm gonna put the name out there. So you had Scott Mitchell, or any other quarterback you want to put back there, and you had you and Barry Sanders, right? I
Mm-hmm.
said if you gave Herman on the other side, John Taylor.
JT, number 82,
You
baby.
gave and
JT.
you gave you
Hey,
JT.
that brother was smooth too. John, hey, he was like, no, he reminded me of like Stallworth, man, when he's out, because I'm a Steelers fan, man. And
I'm sorry.
yeah, there you go. Come on, man. Leave
Well,
my black.
I'm a Washington fan, so
Hey,
I
I grew up in that I'm in Virginia, so my uncles were all either cowboy or redskin.
okay,
I had one that was it was military, but he liked Philadelphia. I was
okay,
Pittsburgh, still to this day. And then, I used to watch JT
okay.
because he was just so smooth. Jared was over there lighting it up. Jared was doing his thing. Jared take a simple 2-yard route, turn it into 80 at the blink of an eye. And Jerry was smooth in his routes. But JT, man, he was kind of in the background. No one really thought much about him. And,
But
man,
if
he was the guy that was lighting them up.
But if you remember, JT was doing the exact same thing, taking a
Mm-hmm.
5-yard slant. I remember that game against the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking slants, and then he became a hard receiver to tackle after the catch. So I said, well, if you put Herman with JT, and then you had Bear, oh, oh,
Yeah,
because
we had a
both
nice little duo going over there, man. It's like, when we played, we had myself, Brett Perriman, Johnny Morton,
yep,
and it was always Emmett, uh, Irvin, and Aikman, but they also had Alvin Harper at that time. And
correct.
we had some really good duels with them. I think when I played, we didn't lose against Dallas. We beat them there, and then we beat them in the playoffs at home. And so we had some pretty good run-ins. That was always the talk, man, when we showed up. But my biggest one was, man, I played with Scott, and I don't throw him under the bus. I know a lot of people throw Scott under the bus, but he was probably, of the quarterbacks I played with, not probably, he was the one I enjoyed playing with the most. I did the most damage in consecutive seasons with him. But
Sure.
Tall guy, nice pass, made some mistakes at critical times that I think people never let him forget. But outside of that, I felt that he was a good quarterback, and at least should have gone to the Pro Bowl at least once. But having said that, you always look and say, man, what if you were on certain teams, or if you played in certain organizations and did those? I mean, that's just part of the game, right? It's no different if you have a car. You'd be like, man, it'd be nice, man. If I had that car, that'd be kind of nice. Or if I could fly that private jet versus just
Well, I
you
was still keeping you in Detroit. I would just say if you paired you with, I wasn't taking you out of Detroit. But you also played in an era where a lot of guys don't understand that you're running the ball still predominantly. Most teams still
right,
predominantly ran the ball. It's not like the era that it is now.
right,
So when you put up numbers like you were putting up and doing the damage you were doing, as well as others receivers, it was more impressive because you already knew that the running backs were going to get the ball first, second
right,
down. You guys really weren't getting the ball to third down. It's like first, second. Okay, come on, Herman. It's third,
right.
and come on, Herman, make it happen. You sitting there like, hey, touch the ball.
It was, and you're just not touching it as much, and you're expected to do a lot. And so you will look at us and see how often did we catch a pass for a first down, because we were the ones who were going to move the chains. And you always try and get that first 3 to 5 yards on running. But when you got a guy like Barry, I mean, no one's going to argue with why you
Oh
give the
no.
ball to Barry. So
Yeah, nobody.
you got to give Mighty Mouse the rock first.
Oh
And
yeah.
then from there, we filled in the gaps, but we end up getting a really good balance that you stack we were paying the secondary if you want to go man. And then from then on, we became kind of a force for a period of time through 94 through 97. I mean, it was tough for teams to shut us down.
Tell me about the Grooming.
Golden Grooming is a company that I became an owner in a little bit earlier this year, and it's geared towards skin and hair products for Black men. It's
Okay.
one that I think that market is really underserved and undertapped. And it's not to ignore other ethnicities or anything like that, but I think there's a from a business and also from a need,
Okay.
there's some attention that needs to be placed there. And then what made it even more important for me is that we became a manufacturer. That is our product. That is a product
Oh,
for
okay.
Black men and African American men. But we have our own facility. So my goal this year is to start offering our services and our products to start to get those who are doing it at their homes, that are doing it in their basements, or those that want to be able to scale, to come to us, and we want to be able to take them start to finish. With Golden Grooming as a product, it shows an example of the high level and consistency of what we do. But I want to be able to turn that and turn entrepreneurship into something that's real and tangible for a lot of people who are looking for that, especially men of color or women of color that are needing that. We got to be able to be manufacturers and owners of our product. And
Yes.
that's what I'm gonna be driven to do. My goal is to help start 2 to 4 companies every month. Get 2 to 4 companies and entrepreneurial people that are looking to do it at no cost to them. While partnering with them, we'll take them, we'll create their brand, We'll create their labels, their packaging, their website, their e-commerce platform, the whole nine,
Hmm.
and then we'll also manufacture and do their product and partner with them. And so that's my goal. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully, we'll get up to 30 to 40 companies that we help start this year for some entrepreneurial people. And so that's our mission with Golden.
That's impressive. That's impressive. I will make sure that when this airs, that I put the website up so people can
Okay.
go and check it out, and the entrepreneurs and all that can see it as well. Um, what was I've just uh, what was the feeling like to be inducted, as I mentioned earlier, into Virginia and Michigan, two different states, Hall of Fame, man? What is that feeling like?
It felt good. At first, I said maybe they didn't have enough people. Man, they ran out of people. They called me and asked me to put me in there. They must have been down that year on some talent. No, no. In all seriousness, man, it was an honor. First, being from my state I was born in, Virginia,
Yes.
to be inducted. I felt that there's been a lot of talent. There's been a lot of great athletes that have come out of there in all sports and Olympians, and then to go out and basically grew up in Michigan. That's my
Right.
adulthood I've spent here,
Sure.
and to be able to be inducted there and to carry that same integrity, that same professionalism from my collegiate career and now to another place, just it's been wonderful, man. It's two homes now for me, and having the
Okay.
ability to be inducted into both meant a lot, and to see all the others that have gone in that were some significant people.
Well, I mean, you deserved it. It's just a testament to what type of player and person that you are, because you and I both know sometimes you can be a great player, but if they don't like off the field, then those type honors sometimes don't come
Oh yeah,
everyone's way.
absolutely.
My final question for you is: in your 20s, who was Herman Moore, and who is Herman Moore now?
In my 20s, I was a black man with a bad haircut. I had a high top fade, and it had a big part in the middle that was never even. And I just should have went ahead. I should have stopped being cheap, man, and went to the barber, man, and had my boys hook me up instead of me going out there and trying to cut my own hair. So that's who I was in my 20s. The dude now is a professional guy. He understands not to micromanage. I
Right.
delegate, and if I got a team around me, I expect my team to have the same accountability that I put on myself. And with that, we get more done together than we do by ourselves. So I've learned that, and I've learned to understand where is the most important places to spend my time, and it's not trying to sit there and cut my hair and do my own grooming like that. So other than that, man, 20s was young, and you're still trying to find your way. But one thing I will say
Right.
about that is that I was willing to try a lot of different things.
Sure.
I didn't put myself in a box, and even like today, even in business, you know what?
Hmm.
I at that time I was a student athlete, not an athlete. I was a student athlete. And once I
Okay.
left there, I became a professional football player who was dedicated to his game and his craft. And then after that, I become a businessman who is a former NFL football player. So that's who I am today.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I will follow you. I appreciate all the success that you have had, because it's been inspirational, for me. And as I was telling Chrissy, this is easy for me because all I try to do is interview people I've always wanted to talk to. And
Oh,
of course, you were always one wanted to talk to. So I appreciate you coming on the show, blessing us with your presence. Make sure you please stay safe and stay blessed.
yeah, I will do. Continue success to you, and it's an honor to get to speak with you and all the success that you're having. Wish that and continued blessings to you as well.
All right. Peace.